At
Please, we need to
9:47
talk about
p.m.,
this right now.
a plus-sized black waitress approached the most ruthless Korean crime lord in the city and whispered, 5 killers. 10th floor. 3 minutes. Kang Jun-hyuk didn't even glance up. To him, she was furniture with a voice. He dismissed her with a hand wave. She didn't plead. Just turned away and said one last thing, "You'll think of me when the shooting starts." At 9:50 p.m., his door exploded. 5 armed men. Exactly as she predicted. And the only reason he survived the next 60 seconds? The woman he'd looked straight through. How did she know? This story won't make you comfortable. The woman who saves him isn't a hero. She's strategic, damaged, playing her own game. The man who gets saved isn't grateful. He's shattered, realizing his survival was controlled by someone he trained himself never to see. The real danger isn't the bullets. It's what happens after Jun-hyuk discovers Nora knew about the hit for 3 weeks. She didn't warn him too early. That would have given him control. She didn't wait too late. That would have killed him. She picked the exact moment that would make him forever indebted to someone he dismissed as invisible. Nora Bell had perfected the art of being nobody. At the Grand Meridian Hotel, she existed in that strange space where hands moved but faces didn't register. She refilled water glasses, cleared plates, straightened chairs, all while the guests looked straight through her like she was made of air. But Nora saw everything. She noticed the businessman whose voice climbed half an octave when lying to his wife on the phone. The executive whose fingers trembled before signing contracts. The subtle language of people pretending. And tonight, something was wrong. 5 men had arrived separately over the past 2 hours. Different elevators. Different entrances. But their eyes swept the lobby the same way, cataloging exits, counting security, measuring distances. Then Kang Jun-hyuk walked in. The lobby didn't go silent, but it shifted. Conversations became quieter. Staff moved with careful precision. Even the marble floors seemed to hold their breath. He moved like violence in an expensive suit, tailored, controlled, inevitable. His tattoos, barely visible at his collar and wrists, told stories Nora didn't need translated. She watched Minute J arrive 10 minutes later. Jun-hyuk's right hand, supposedly. He took a different elevator without acknowledging his boss. Strange. Then the ex-wife, Yuna, gliding through the lobby in designer heels, her phone pressed to her ear. She didn't even glance toward the restaurant where Jun-hyuk sat dining alone. People who should avoid each other were orbiting the same building. Nora cleared a table near the bar, her ears catching fragments. 10th floor. After the meeting. No survivors. The 5 men from earlier were positioned now. Lobby. Elevator bank. Stairwell. Service corridor. Parking garage. Too deliberate. Too coordinated. They ignored each other with the precision of people who'd rehearsed it. Nora's pulse quickened. She glanced at Jun-hyuk, alone at his table, cutting his steak with mechanical precision. He had no idea he was already surrounded. Nora watched the clock above the bar. 9:45 p.m. The 5 men were moving into position. She could warn him now, give him time to call backup, to run, to prepare. But that wasn't the point. 9:47 p.m. She approached his table, her hand steady despite her racing heart. He didn't look up. Just continued cutting his steak with surgical precision, as if she were part of the furniture. 5 men. 10th floor. 3 minutes. They're coming to kill you. Now he looked up. Not at her face, at her uniform. His eyes held the flat disinterest of someone being interrupted by a malfunction. Security will handle it, he said, his voice dismissive as turning a page. Your security is compromised. Nora kept her voice low, urgent. Minute J set this up. His expression shifted, annoyance hardening into anger. You're speaking about things you don't understand. He leaned back, radiating contempt. Go back to work. Nora didn't flinch. She'd expected this. Men like him couldn't process warnings from women like her. Their worldview wouldn't allow it. Suite 1406, she said. Your ex-wife paid for it yesterday. False name. Ask yourself why she'd need a room in the same hotel where you're having a meeting. She turned and walked away before he could respond, her legs steady, her breathing controlled. Behind her, she felt his gaze, no longer dismissive. Confused. Irritated. But alert. He'd remember Yuna's name. He'd remember the suite number. And in 3 minutes, when his door exploded inward, he'd remember the waitress he'd looked straight through. Nora didn't save people. She tested them. And Kang Junhyuk had just failed the first test, the one that would determine whether he deserved the warning she'd given him anyway. 9:50 p.m. Junhyuk stood at the suite's window, adjusting his cufflinks. The waitress's words still nagged at him, not because he believed them, but because she'd mentioned Yuna with such certainty. He'd check with Minute J when the door exploded inward. Not breached. Blown. The frame splintered like kindling. 5 masked figures poured through the smoke, weapons raised, moving with synchronized precision. His bodyguard turned, reaching for his gun. 3 suppressed shots. The man dropped before his fingers touched the holster. Junhyuk moved on instinct, diving behind the couch as bullets chewed through cushions. His hand found the pistol strapped to his ankle. He returned fire, dropping 1 attacker. But 4 remained, flanking, coordinating, closing the distance like wolves. 5 men. Her voice echoed in his skull. 10th floor. Suite 1402, his suite. 3 minutes. He glanced at his watch. 9:50 p.m. exactly 3 minutes. She knew everything. And he dismissed her like she was nothing. A bullet grazed his shoulder. Pain exploded, hot and clarifying. He fired again. Missed. They were advancing, professional, patient. He was cornered, bleeding, seconds from execution. Then the fire alarm shrieked to life. Emergency sprinklers erupted, drowning the room in chaos. Water. Confusion. The attackers hesitated, blinded by the deluge. A service door Junhyuk had never noticed burst open, hidden in the wall paneling, invisible until now. Nora stood there, water streaming down her face. Move or die. Not a request. A statement of fact. His pride screamed to stay, to fight, to prove he didn't need saving by a waitress. But his survival instinct, honed by decades of violence, overrode everything else. He lunged through the door as bullets punched the wall where his head had been. She slammed it shut behind them, her hands already working the lock. In the darkness of the service corridor, soaked and bleeding, Junhyuk finally saw her. The woman who'd been right about everything. The corridor behind the walls was narrow, dim, utilitarian. Exposed pipes and concrete replaced marble and gold leaf. Nora moved through the maze without hesitation, left, right, down a maintenance stairwell, while Junhyuk stumbled after her, pressing his hand against the wound in his shoulder. This world had existed inches from his suite. He'd never known. They'll check the main stairwells first, Nora said, her voice calm, analytical. Then the elevators. Service corridors are last because most guests don't know they exist. She stopped at a maintenance closet, pulled out a first aid kit stashed behind cleaning supplies. Prepared. You've done this before, Junhyuk said, studying her. No. She grabbed his arm, guided him into a laundry room. But I've been planning since I realized what you are. The words hung between them. She'd been watching him. Studying him. For how long? Nora unpacked gauze and antiseptic, her movements efficient. Sit. His pride bristled at the command, but his body complied. She cleaned the wound, a graze, painful but not fatal, and he watched her face. Really looked at her for the first time. Intelligent eyes. Steady hands. The kind of competence that came from necessity, not privilege. Why? He asked. Why warn me? Why save me? She met his gaze directly. No deference, no fear. I haven't decided yet if I did the right thing. The honesty disarmed him more than the bullets had. You knew about this for weeks, he said, reading it in her expression. You could have. Could have what? Warned you earlier. She rapped his shoulder with practiced precision. Men like you don't listen to women like me. You needed to bleed first. You needed to understand what it feels like when someone decides whether you live or die. She secured the bandage. Now you know how invisible people survive. We watch. We wait. And we choose our moments. The back office smelled of detergent and old coffee. Nora locked the door, pulled up a staff computer, and opened a folder she'd labeled inventory reports. Junhyuk leaned over her shoulder as she clicked through files that had nothing to do with inventory. Security footage, Minute J meeting with 3 of the assassins in the parking garage 2 weeks ago. Financial records, transfer she'd photographed while cleaning his office, money siphoned systematically over 6 months. Text messages she'd glimpsed on an abandoned phone. After tonight, the organization needs stable leadership. Minute J. Jun Hyuk breathed. His brother in everything but blood. The man he'd trusted with his life. He's been positioning himself for months, Nora said, scrolling further. The embezzlement wasn't greed. It was groundwork. When you died tonight, he'd step in as the stabilizing force. The loyal lieutenant restoring order. Then she opened another file. Bank statements. Wire transfers. All traced back to a shell company. Yuna's shell company. Your ex-wife financed the entire operation, Nora said quietly. She's been leveraging Minute J's ambition. He gets your empire. She gets revenge and a percentage of everything. Jun Hyuk's hands gripped the desk edge, knuckles white. The woman he'd loved. The man he'd called brother. Both working to erase him like he was a problem to solve. You knew. His voice was acid. For weeks, you knew about this. Why didn't you? Why didn't I warn you earlier? Nora turned to face him. Because I needed you to understand what it feels like. When people you trust decide you're disposable. When your life hangs on someone else's whim. Her eyes were hard, unforgiving. Now you know how the rest of us live every single day. His anger warred with necessity. He needed her. Hated that he needed her. What else haven't you told me? She smiled, cold and knowing. Exactly. Footsteps echoed through the service corridor. Heavy. Methodical. The remaining 2 assassins had figured it out. Their targets had gone through the walls. Nora pressed a finger to her lips, pulling Jun Hyuk into a supply closet. They froze in the darkness, surrounded by mops and industrial cleaner. Through the gap in the door, a masked figure passed within inches. His radio crackled. Sub-basement. Check the mechanical rooms. They waited until the footsteps faded, then moved. The parking garage was exposed, 2 open. Nora led them through the basement levels instead, using the hotel's infrastructure like a weapon. She released steam from a maintenance pipe, scalding fog that bought them 30 seconds. She toppled a supply shelf as they passed, the crash blocking the corridor behind them. Near the industrial freezer, she stopped. Gestured for Jun Hyuk to hide. When the assassin rounded the corner, she was standing there, visible, vulnerable. He advanced. She ran, straight into the freezer. He followed. Jun Hyuk slammed the door shut, engaged the lock. Muffled pounding from inside. 1 down. They collapsed in a storage room, breathing hard. Jun Hyuk studied her in the dim light. Who are you really? Nora laughed, bitter and exhausted. Nobody. Single mother. 3 jobs. Invisible to everyone who matters. She looked at her hands. I've had executives grab my ass in hallways. No consequences. Who believes the maid? I've watched people like you treat people like me as furniture that occasionally speaks. Then why save me? Because I have a daughter. Her voice cracked. And I needed to know if I could live with myself if I didn't. You want the truth. The world wouldn't miss you. But it would definitely miss my daughter's mother. The word sat between them. Honest, brutal, undeniable. Jun Hyuk nodded slowly. For the first time in his life, he understood, the most dangerous people weren't the ones you could see coming. The sub-basement was a maze of pipes and machinery, the boiler room's heat oppressive. Nora and Jun Hyuk backed into a corner as footsteps approached from 2 directions. The final assassin had called for backup. They were trapped. Nora pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. Done, she said, showing him. Everything I collected, uploaded. Set to autosend to news outlets and law enforcement in 30 minutes. Jun Hyuk stared at the countdown timer. You're blackmailing me? Now. I'm giving you a choice. Her voice was steady despite the approaching danger. You can use this evidence to destroy everyone who betrayed you. Survive this. Reclaim your empire. But only if you acknowledge that I'm the reason you're breathing. Only if you accept that your power survives because someone you never saw chose to let it. Rage flooded his face. What do you want? I want you to remember this feeling, she said. I want you to know that your life was never yours to control. The assassins rounded the corners simultaneously. What followed was chaos. Jun-hyuk moved with lethal precision, but Nora's voice cut through. Left pipe, use it for cover. His reloading. Now, her tactical mind seeing angles his combat instincts missed. He fired. She threw a wrench that connected with skull. Steam erupted from a valve she'd opened, blinding one attacker long enough for Jun-hyuk to close the distance. Brutal. Desperate. Survival stripped to its rawest form. When the gunfire stopped, they were both on the ground, covered in blood, some theirs, most not. The assassins weren't moving. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Jun-hyuk looked at Nora, breathing hard. I accept. She nodded, cancelling the timer with shaking fingers. They'd survived. But the victory tasted like ash, heavy with the weight of what they'd become to each other. Bound by blood and debt neither could escape. Dawn broke over the Grand Meridian Hotel. Red and blue lights painted the lobby. Paramedics worked on Jun-hyuk's shoulder while detectives took statements. His lawyers arrived in expensive suits, already constructing the narrative. Business rivals, attempted assassination, heroic hotel employee. The official story wrote itself. Behind the scenes, his organization moved like a scalpel. Minute J was found in his apartment. Apparent suicide, gun in hand, confession note nearby. 3 co-conspirators vanished overnight. Their families compensated for their silence. Yuna made it to the airport but not through customs. Her accounts frozen, her network dismantled. She fled to a country without extradition. The empire stabilized. Jun-hyuk remained in control. He found Nora in the employee break room, still in her uniform, giving her statement to a junior officer. When they were alone, he approached with an envelope. Name your price. Money. Protection. A position in my organization. Anything. She didn't open it. I don't want your money. Then what? I want you to live with what happened tonight. She met his eyes. I want you to look at every person you've ignored and wonder what they know about you. He tried again. Let me. I had a choice, she interrupted. I could have let you die. Gone home to my daughter. Pretended I never saw anything. Nobody would have blamed me. She stood, exhausted, carrying a weight he could see but not measure. But I saved you anyway. Not because you deserved it. Because I needed to know if I could live with myself if I didn't. She walked toward the door, then paused. Now I have to live with saving you. And you have to live with being saved by me. She left him standing there, surrounded by lawyers and power and control. But they both knew the truth. She held something he could never reclaim. 3 weeks later, Kang Jun-hyuk stood in his penthouse, staring at the city below. His empire ran smoother than ever. The traitors purged, the hierarchy reinforced, profits climbing. But he was different now. He looked at people. Really looked. The security guard in his lobby. The woman who cleaned his office. The server at his restaurant. He saw them seeing him, their eyes cataloguing, remembering, knowing. His greatest vulnerability wasn't the enemies he could identify. It was the invisible observers he'd spent a lifetime ignoring. He'd searched for Nora. Discreetly. Thoroughly. She'd vanished back into her life like smoke, deliberate and unreachable. He drove past the Grand Meridian sometimes, watching the entrance. She was there, back at work as if nothing had happened. He never approached. Just watched from a distance, wondering if she was watching him too. She was. In her small apartment across town, Nora held her daughter, listening to her talk about school. But her mind was elsewhere. She'd saved a violent man. His enemies were dead because of her. Every crime he committed now, every life he destroyed, was that her responsibility too? Mama, why are you sad? Her daughter asked. I did something I thought was right, Nora said quietly. But I'm not sure anymore. The next morning, she was refilling water glasses in the Grand Meridian lobby when Jun-hyuk entered for a meeting. Their eyes met across the marble floor. A moment of recognition. He nodded, acknowledgement, respect, fear. She nodded back, satisfaction, regret, power. Then they both continued with their days, forever changed, forever bound by a single night when invisibility became the most dangerous force in the room. In his world of wealth and violence, he now knew, the people you don't see control everything. In her world of uniforms and erasure, she now carried a weight she'd never asked for. Neither had won. Both had survived. And the question lingered between them, unanswered and unanswerable: who really held the knife?